I'm right here, boss man. I got this, yeah.
We are back, and we have enough for a basketball starting lineup right here.
Look at this. It's not something you want to see, though. For me, from my perspective, you guys are probably awesome. I know Matt's tall enough.
I'll call power forward.
And I'm a football school.
Yeah. What is basketball?
I don't know. I don't pay attention anymore.
Football. Phil, are you joining us from Hurricane Bunker, or are you not being affected over there in the Redneck Riviera?
Yeah, no, we're a different state, in particular for this one. But my there's some horrible images out there down there in Fort Myers. I got some friends down there, including our good friend Mark Clare. That's right. Just keep in touch with him earlier. So last I talked to him, he had power, but hopefully still does.
Yeah,
I like that Mark experienced the full-fledged Florida within months. He moves there and gets COVID, of course, in the super spreader state. And now he's experiencing a hurricane. I'm just trying to laugh in the face of horror. But I hope, Mark, if you're listening, which you're probably not, this isn't a wrestling podcast, but we hope you're okay.
Yeah, Floridian baptism right there.
My little sister just moved to Orlando, to the Orlando area, like 2 months ago. She's lived in Washington State her whole life. She moved just north of Orlando to go to college, and here she gets a tornado or a hurricane.
Welcome to Florida.
Yeah.
Will you be affected, Magoo, or no?
Potentially. Come, I think, Saturday. If the Dogs were playing in Athens, I would be far more concerned, but they're going to be up in Mizzou. My sister lives in Savannah, and we've been going back and forth on whether or not she needs to pack up her shit and come north, but she's going to brave it. I mean, anything more than 4 inches down there, it's flooding. So we shall see.
So are you really completely untouched where you're at?
Yeah, at least right now. I mean, at one point it was looking at it started off heading right this way, but since it's going through down there by Naples, and then you're going kind of towards the east side of the state and going north. We'll probably get a little bit when it comes a little bit further up, but it shouldn't be too bad.
Nice.
Good.
But it might affect the Tampa game though.
I saw that. I saw Minneapolis might be one of the alternate sites. It's like that's a completely different part of the country. But
what do they do with people's tickets in that case? Like, if you had tickets to go to that game, is it like if you show up in Minneapolis, then they'll honor your ticket, but otherwise you're SOL? Do they pay you out? Do they refund you the ticket? I've always wondered how that kind of thing works.
So I think if you're able to make it, they'll honor it. But if you want a refund, you'll get it. As far as like season tickets or like club suite agreements, I'm sure you sign away, some act of God stipulation. But something similar happened here in Atlanta, I don't know, over a decade ago when a tornado hit the Georgia Dome when the SEC basketball conference championship was going on. And they had to overnight, like, take the entire tournament, put it in Georgia Tech's much smaller arena. And there were more tickets sold than they had available seats. And there were big issues, but a lot of people just got screwed. I mean, it was like, okay, we'll give you a refund, first come, first serve. Basically, they had to reissue all the tickets because the Georgia Dome versus whatever Coliseum those horrible bastards in downtown Atlanta play in are very vastly, two different sizes. So something probably similar. I would imagine if you're in Minneapolis and you're just a football fan and you want to see a football game, you could probably get tickets pretty easy to go tell Tom Brady where he can stick it.
Yeah.
Mark says stick it straight in the middle of my heart.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that at first.
I'm still seeing, I think there's a stipulation. I'm like in the process of like legal action at this point. But 2 weeks ago, when I was in Las Vegas, the team collapsed out from under me. And so I'm trying to see if there's some sort of, it had to be an act of Satan or something, but I'm trying to figure out like where I can get my money back. I paid to stay in a hotel. I'm still trying to figure it out. They disappeared into the black hole.
Emotional distress. There's a tort there.
Yeah,
you could do a class action lawsuit with all the Devontae Adams fantasy owners.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, we can stay there. What's going on with the Raiders book?
I don't know. At this point, I'm holding on to like superstitious, ridiculous things. I don't know. Yeah, here it is. If anyone saw this was yesterday in Las Vegas. If you can see this is a giant lightning bolt coming into the middle of this Coliseum, not called the Coliseum anymore, the stadium. Hopefully that like sparks something. What I will say, I don't know precisely because it's all across the board. I mean, I guess, ultimately I would say coaching, because last year we made the playoffs and we looked better with a worse team and an interim coach. So I'm a little confused of what's going on. And there's all kinds of issues along the offensive line, the defense and the offense aren't locking in together. So when I was there, when they played Arizona, the offense looked great the first half and the defense looked okay. And then they both just kind of gave up in the second half. It looked like last week against the Titans, the defense started making these stops all of a sudden. And then it's like, all right, Carr, see what you can do. So all the Carr haters are like, see, the defense made these stops and now he can't do anything. It's like, well, yeah, there's 3 minutes left and we're down multiple scores. So I don't know how they can do this. I guess it's coaching. I'm confused, to be quite honest. And it's inconsistency across the board. And that's the biggest issue. It's frustrating. I'm going to pick them for a foreshadow here one last time. And if they lose this week, I'm not picking them again until they prove otherwise. But the Broncos are also having issues. So Maybe this lightning bolt can help. Maybe the Broncos, their own inconsistencies can help us. It is at home. We shall see. Also, this is interesting. I heard someone say this, a sports writer who I trust. It was on Rich Eisen's show, and he said that this is common amongst Belichick coached teams. So basically insinuating that Josh McDaniels is continuing the Patriot way, that their first few games in September are always them trying to see what works and pretending like it's preseason for them. That's a little risky, but okay, when every game counts. I hope that's true. And so this particular sports writer was saying, look for this to get turned around in the next game or two, and the Raiders will look a lot better than they have. This is very common from Belichick teams of the past, so we shall see.
I guess my first question is who the hell is Mac Hollins, and where did he come from? And is he somebody that can be depended on, any more than this past week?
That's funny you ask. Matt and I were watching the game this past Sunday at my house, and Matt knows all the answers to the questions you just asked. I was wondering that too. In camp, he was a standout. The beat writers I follow said, this Mac Hollins guy looks great. He looks like a stereotypical great wide receiver with his size and his speed. Watch out for this guy. He looked badass the other day, but Matt, you know who he is.
Yeah, he was. I had him in a dynasty league a couple years ago. I'd gotten him as a rookie when he was drafted. So he's drafted out of North Carolina, 4th round, 2017, by the Eagles, and he was just basically collecting splinters for the Eagles for a few years. And I kept waiting for him to turn it around. He'd flash, he'd get like a couple of deep targets in a game and maybe pull one down. And he was like that premier, the prototype, the 6'4", long-legged perimeter receiver that he just profiled as that like downfield type receiver, kind of maybe like the Martavis Bryant kind of style of receiver. And I guess that's a little bit of a deep cut now. And yeah, then he just kind of disappeared. I gave up and cut him, and just was like, yeah, this guy's not going anywhere, which amusingly, exact same story just about for me with Greg Dortch, drafted by the Jets. There was nothing, like he didn't even make the team out of the preseason. And so I cut him and forgot about him. And then here we go this year. It shows up Greg Dortch. I didn't pay much attention to preseason. The first game of the season that Greg Dortch is going off. And I'm like, what? How's Greg? I thought the guy was going to be like selling cars or selling insurance or something like that. And here he is playing the Rondale Moore role. So yeah, it's been a very weird season so far. The majority of my football awareness at this point is fantasy and really just like DFS is my primary focus. I've got a few dynasty leagues, but I play a lot of DFS, and it's just been a very strange season.
Yeah.
Tho, you got any kind words to say about Bucks Raiders?
Well, I'm just interested to see. I mean, it's all the pieces are there. I mean, it's just one of those things. I really don't have. I haven't been watching a lot of Raiders games, so I don't know exactly where the breakdowns are in. I did see the amusing Kyler Murray 2-point conversion. That was like a comedy skit going on there. But all these games,
cartoon background music.
Yeah, but I think though, like they've lost by a total of 13 points over 3 weeks, so it's not, they aren't getting blown out by anyone. It hasn't been the easiest of schedule. They should have won that Cardinals game.
Yeah.
The Titans were a team that were desperate to win at this point. I was very low on the Titans coming in. I had a long shot bet on them being last in the AFC South, and that looked good until last week. And the Chargers were, Justin Herbert had fully functioning ribs, when they played. So I'm not too, worried too much. I do think that if they don't beat the Broncos, that's definitely a red flag there.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a talented roster outside. It doesn't seem like Carr's problem right now is necessarily the complete collapse of the offensive line. I mean, it could play better. I know what Waller dropped, 2 touchdown passes last week?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's certainly not helping things.
And one deep, wide open. And it's frustrating. It's like, dude, he held out a little bit in camp because of trying to get a contract. And then he gets one wide open and drops it. And then there was one this is getting into the weeds, I understand, but there was a wide open Devontae Adams and Waller in the end zone, thought it was for him, and almost played defense trying to grab the ball and knocked it away from Adams. It's like McDaniels, I hope he's chewing their ass behind the scenes because this is unacceptable.
Yeah, that Waller contract going into the season was a move that I thought was questionable. I mean, he's already past 30.
Mm-hmm.
You just made obviously a major financial contribution to the Devontae Adams generational fund, and Renfro is now kind of forgotten man. you saw Mac Hollins. But then you also have Foster Moreau on the roster, who was was proven to be a very fine tight end. I don't know if that contract will age well over time, but the Raiders are going to do Raiders things.
The Tennessee did get a Derrick Henry game finally out of Derrick Henry.
Finally,
actually was catching the ball out of the backfield a lot too.
Yeah, that whole game made me look just as stupid as I likely am, because last week I was like, Tennessee's not going to have a bounce back game against the Raiders. They are that bad. Henry runs too stiff. He's coming back from injury. He can't even get to the line before he's getting hit. He's washed up. Flush him. And what do I know? Nothing. They prove me wrong every week.
Yeah, just watch last week's show. I think we all, not just you. Going back to Florida, though, I think last week we all said that Miami, we would believe more in Miami if they beat the Bills. But at the same time, at least I said this anyways, if Miami won, it would be a shootout. And here was a 21-19 game. Allen did throw the ball 63 times, though.
Yeah. Though you picked Miami, didn't you?
I did. I'm just a believer in Mike McDaniels. I think he's, right now starting off the block here, and he's plenty of time to make this take look very bad. But he's playing the smartest football, or calling this the smartest football out there. His background itself is very interesting. I know he's a gamer and with an Ivy League pedigree, and he kind of looks like a douchebag of sorts. But he's connecting, and I love just seeing smart football being played, and I think that's exactly what you have here. I mean, someone from a Shanahan tree that's not afraid to throw the ball vertically, and you have around Tua, the two fastest wide receivers in the game. I know when they played the Ravens a couple weeks ago, the Ravens defensive backs ran for like over 6,000 yards and just ran them down in the Dolphins' heat. And of course, the heat itself, I think that was one of the most brutal games in terms of just like heat exhaustion going out there on the field. Maybe the Dolphins are finally in a position where they can make home field advantage actually work rather than be a punchline in South Florida. So yeah, I'm very bullish. I'm very bullish on the Dolphins right now. That is the side of me. But between the Dolphins and the Jaguars, I mean, this is definitely might be a year outside of Tampa for Florida teams.
Yeah, that Jaguars team is really. I saw so many film studies on Trevor Lawrence over the offseason, and I was just like, the NFL is a quarterback-driven game, and the Jaguars have a very good quarterback. So, and their defense isn't bad. So they obviously went out and spent a lot of money. A lot of people questioned whether that money was appropriately spent, but they surrounded the guy with some talent, and he's got a good head coach now, and it's looking like it.
And the defensive talent they have, yeah,
it's amazing what can happen when you get Urban Meyer out of your city.
How bad? Like somehow Urban Meyer came out looking even worse than he already did. Like you would have thought that the guy had reached the absolute basement for how bad you can look, and then the Jaguars come out and start. I mean, and this probably is more commentary on what the Jaguars have been before. That the start that they've had were very impressed by, because it's been an impressive start, but it's also they're not the Bills, Right. But somehow Urban Meyer comes out looking even worse. That's an impressive level of just sheer incompetent douchebaggery.
And I think we can all agree that's a win for everyone.
Oh, it's a definite win.
Well, the other side of it, though, is Doug Peterson. He is I think an actively good coach, and not simply not a bad one too.
Right.
Which is paying big dividends. Actually, I got his I got the audiobook version of his biography after the Trayvon Walker first round pick, which made me a lot of money, and so I was feeling very generous to Doug Peterson. It's awful. Don't read it. The ghostwriter is not very good. But I do think that you saw a little bit of his sort of risk taking sort of behavior there. One thing that going back to the Dolphins, I do have a bet for tomorrow's game that I love, because if you look back and you see on the other side of the equation there, the Bengals. You look at who has been putting up yards. The tight end has been absolutely crushing it against the Bengals. Conklin went 8 for 84 last week. In the first week, Freiermuth went 5 for 75. In the Cowboys game, Schultz got injured I think the first half there. But then Tony Pollard went 4 for 55. Noah Brown from the slot went 5 for 91. Obviously, there's a massive vulnerability there. And so if you're looking at Mike McDaniels and you believe that he is a coach that can take advantage of teams' weaknesses and can kind of scheme a game plan to take advantage of these things, well, I'm certainly no big believer in Mike Gesicki as a great tight end. He did play, I think, 61% of the snaps last week. He's getting a lot more big slot work, which is the way he should have always been treated. You can right now on betonline.ag, I'm sure it's similar out there, you can get a player parlay. And it's an aggressive play, and I get it, but it has an aggressive reward. If you have Gesicki going for 5 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown with the Bengals or with the Dolphins going over 21.5 points, it is a 91-1 payout.
Damn.
So you put $2 on that. You have a chance for you have a chance for a nice payday. Just add a little bit of excitement to your Thursday night. That is a player performance parlay that I very much like. I have a bet down on that. Just throwing that out there for a good 91-1 opportunity.
This is why we missed Phil on the show here.
Yeah. For the thick-headed out here, will you just do the math? So if I put $100 down and that happens, we're looking at
9,100.
They have some strict they have a lot more limits on sort of the player performance parlays, and so you might be able to put $10 down. I actually had so last week I put money on Zay Jones going, I think 4 for 74 and 2 touchdowns, and I was watching the entire game. There's the touchdown that Christian Kirk got. If the cornerback was just a little bit better, Zay Jones was his second read. And that I got like 114-1 odds on that one. So like it adds a lot more fun when you kind of narrow it down like one player performance on I had $10 on that, which would have been a very, very nice payday. I've been this close on some big ones already, but definitely adds a little bit more fun. But I think it's like a $10 maximum on that specific bet, but definitely one we're worth playing around with.
Last week I was on Raheem Mostert big time, because my expectation was, obviously going off of the assumption of rational coaching with Mike McDaniel, that he's spent the first 2 weeks blowing people's doors off with the 2 Ferraris. And the natural thing to do is like, okay, you're naturally going to see a lot more cover 2. You're going to see everyone's going to be dropping their defensive backs a lot more. So the natural counterpunch is gash him up the middle with the run. So I was heavy on Raheem Mostert, and that cost me a decent amount of money.
Yeah, I'm looking at those numbers now.
It turned out to be Chase Edmonds was the one who picked up the touchdowns. So I was there, but so this is the same type of call that I'm not seeing that one there anymore. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong spot. Now it says Mike Gesicki to have 80 receiving yards in Miami to win. So
on BetOnline, you have to do like the combined sort of things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
I see. Build it together. Okay, I see. Okay, yeah.
Who's the backup quarterback in Miami? Is it Teddy Bridgewater?
Yeah.
Looks like it.
See, I'm wondering if Vegas is not too favorable on a Teddy to Gesicki connection, because how injured do we know, or will we find out, is Tua? Because that was one hell of a back injury that looked quite concussive.
That was the most obvious concussion I've ever seen. But
they followed all the procedures.
Can they admit that now? Could they admit that? Could they sit him? I guess they might say they're sitting him with a back injury now.
The beauty of it, though, is I don't think it really matters, right? Like I think that what I'm basing it on is more just the Mike McDaniel's play calling than any heroic effort by Tua. I think Tua is he's bigger than Bridgewater. I think that he can hold up a little bit better, but I don't think Tua is some sort of elite quarterback in spite of his numbers. I do hope he wins the MVP, because I did have $10 down on a 200-1 MVP bet last February, so I've got a rooting interest in that. But if you look back historically, I had a friend kind of making the same argument earlier and saying, oh, well, but Teddy, check down Teddy. He's not going to be any better. He's obviously worse than Tua. If you look at their performance prior to this year, Teddy was actually a more aggressive thrower than Tua was. Yeah, he had a full yard higher in average air yards average. His yards per attempt was higher. And so I think Teddy's even someone who can, again, if you have, if you're in a situation where you had Mitch Trubisky getting the ball to Pat Freiermuth, I think that even Teddy Bridgewater as a viable backup quarterback, playing competently within a very smart offensive scheme, can even deliver those numbers, even if Tua isn't good enough for the game.
I do think if we want to actually talk about the game outcome, I think that I would. So I don't know if you guys saw at the end of that game, the Bills and Dolphins. Whoa, Buck just
yeah, I'm not sure what's going on up here, but
that looks pretty cool.
It does.
The end of the end of that Bills Dolphins game, the players looked dead. They were absolutely gassed. Now, the ones who were gassed were primarily the Dolphins defense and Bills offense, because the Bills ran like 90 plays. The Dolphins only ran like 36 or 39 plays or something in one. So I would say on a short turnaround that the Dolphins defense is going to be dragging.
Yeah.
So I would take if there's a line for taking the over on the Cincinnati total, I'd be taking that. The question is, will Miami keep up? This game has usually these island games, especially on the short weeks, usually kind of turn into just a fustercluck. But this one here has some real shootout potential.
Yeah,
and the over under on that game right now is 47 points. I've bet the over several times already.
Oh yeah.
I was watching the end of that game, the Dolphins and the Bills won. I was watching it live when they lined up to punt, and I was like, oh, they might do the snap it over the punter's head and do the intentional safety, which they didn't.
They got a little more creative.
A roundabout way to get that safety, but I don't know, in that situation, I almost thought that a safety was better off anyways.
Yeah, no, it was coached that way. They practiced it. They
Okay.
didn't want anybody set up, catching everybody off guard.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
the other side of
think,
this sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I do think that the Dolphins are a better team than the Bengals, but I don't think that they have everything in place for a short turnaround. The hurricane making them leave town early, much less like everybody's been saying. I've never seen a regular season game where players just lay out on the field as soon as the clock hits zero. I mean, but
they do that in soccer, but not usually in football.
But I mean, the Bengals defense have had problems too, and what's great is you already have. I mean, Tyreek Hill went immediately into Eli Apple bashing after last year's game. So at least that was some good entertainment value, if nothing else.
As he should.
The Jags and the Chargers game was mentioned, and obviously Herbert wasn't 100% that game, but even if he was, like, the fashion in which the Jags dominated that game was pretty surprising to me. So I wonder if maybe I and others overrated the Chargers going into this season.
I know I did. So far, it's still early, but to this point, it's been a very odd season. Players that I've never heard of doing things that players I have heard of are incapable of doing. Teams that shouldn't be winning are winning. Teams that are tying, they're tying anyway. It's been very odd. I'm ready for some normalcy. And I don't know when that's coming or if it's coming, but it just seems very off.
Well,
I mean, the Falcons won last week. What the hell?
That's what happens when you play the current iteration of the Seahawks. The Chargers are interesting. I mean, they were dominating that KC game before some interesting calls were made in that one.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing though is that as bad as the Herbert industry is, at least he's got the best well-paid backup in football with Chase Daniels. They lost Rashawn Slater at tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting there is that there's a Bulldog angle. Their replacement is missing out Sailor, who was the Georgia left tackle last year.
Jamari Sawyer?
Jamari Sawyer, yeah. And it's interesting because he fell down to be like a 6th-round draft pick, which I would have been a lot more. I would have taken the over on that one if it was on the books. But it's gonna be interesting to see if he can replace there, because that's the offensive line has long been an issue with the Chargers. I don't think any team has dealt, outside of the Ravens last year. The Chargers have been the most consistently injured team in major positions for a while now. I mean, Bosa's out as well. So it might be a rough one there for the next few weeks. But it doesn't help either when you have Herbert playing deep in the fourth quarter in a game that's already already gone. I mean, why in the world they were still playing him is another question itself.
Yeah, I mean, would you even in this case where you've got your superstar left tackle already injured? I mean, and you've got Chase Daniels, nothing special, but he's at least he's not completely incompetent. He can go out and hold the fort together for a game, especially, I mean, you're going up against Houston. Would you even start Justin Herbert? It feels like coaching malpractice to me if they put Justin Herbert back out there. And I mean, he strikes me as the type of guy that would probably raise hell if you tried to keep him off the field. But I feel like this is just setting up for prolonging the injury or getting a worse injury. And there seems to be very little upside.
He's known affectionately, I should say, in the Raider Nation as Boy Blunder, that coach. I think I've mentioned that before. He makes some interesting decisions, and I hadn't even thought about that angle, Matt. I mean, it is just the Texans. And you could tell once the KC Chiefs hurt his ribs, he wasn't the same after that. He kept cringing every time, kept showing his face, and then last week he wasn't the same. But I think they think, I don't know, I was going to say that the AFC West is so competitive. We all lost last week except for the luck of the San Francisco 49ers collapsing in the last minute or two.
And Russ going Russ mode.
There you go. That too.
For one drive.
Yeah. Yes. Again, it reminded me, it was shades of the Rams and Niners, where I thought at that game last year that the Niners are going to come out on top, and then they just Jimmy G. I don't know how clutch he is, but I don't want to get too far off topic. That's interesting to think that they could sit Herbert this weekend. I doubt they will, but it is the Texans.
Just on the sub, not to jump all over here, but just on the subject of Jimmy G, did you see the slow-mo of him walking off after that last play? They got the close-up of his face.
No.
And he said, dude, our plays suck.
I saw ESPN scrolling across the bottom of something that alluded to that much. Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, he and Kyle Shanahan do not care for one another.
Yeah.
There's a reason they traded for 3 first-round picks to get rid of him.
I don't know too many players that long to play for Shanahan. I don't think he's a likable dude. I know when he left here in Atlanta, especially, he was the grand, director of the 28-3 collapse. And I don't have anything good to say about the man. I think
he had a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl too against the Chiefs.
When they lost against the Chiefs was the happiest I've been during a Super Bowl in my entire life. And that includes the 2 times that the Falcons even made it to the Super Bowl, because fuck that dude. He deserves everything bad coming to him. And that's all I got to say about it.
How do you really feel?
I fell asleep at halftime of that Broncos-Niners game, and I woke up and saw that I missed an 11-10 game. I was like, oh, well.
Yeah.
Second time in NFL history that score has been achieved.
It was a very weird score.
They're doing big things.
Magoo, did you pick the Colts over the Chiefs last week?
I don't remember. Probably not, because
Matt was close picking it.
Okay. Man, I wish I had.
Oh yeah, he was this close.
You saw that the late money was coming in.
It. Yeah.
The late money was coming in. The sharps were coming in on the Colts. You could see that the line was coming down throughout the week. And it just, I don't even know. I was trying to think of a rationalization for why I wanted to pick the Colts, but it just felt like one of those games where the Chiefs haven't been lighting it on fire, and the Chiefs have always had issues with the Colts. They've had some crazy games in the past. I was reminded of that one. You remember the playoff game where it was a total shootout, and with Andrew Luck in 2013, I do remember this, 45-44.
The Chiefs had a huge lead at one point, right?
Yeah. And they came roaring back. That was 9 years ago, man. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. But yeah, the Chiefs are another interesting one. They don't look like the Chiefs yet. And because they're the Chiefs, because it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I think everyone's just kind of assuming that they're going to get it together eventually. But this is interesting that this division was tagged as the this was going to be the strongest division in football. It was going to be the one that everyone's just beating the shit out of each other and beating the shit out of everyone else. And all four teams are, I think it's safe to say all four teams are significantly underwhelming everyone's
Question
expectations.
marks all
Yeah.
across the board. The AFC South beat us last week. I mean, the Broncos game with the exception because they had the Niners, but the rest of us in that division lost to an AFC South team.
The team that we looked over in our preview show, we're like, this is the worst one.
Yep. Not even close. Don't even watch it.
Mahomes had the game-ending interception in that game against the Chargers. He should have had 4. What do you have? Like just 1. But I mean, there are a lot of drops the Chargers defensive backs made.
Yeah. I will say this about the Colts and Chiefs game. Matt Ryan still didn't look great.
Mhm.
He still has been, I think he's been hit. I don't know if it's the most in the NFL, but there was one time Red Zone. I just put it on Red Zone and lose the remote for 7 hours. It's the greatest channel ever created.
Yes.
And one time they clicked over into the game right when Matt Ryan's ankles were were the highest thing off the ground. And I was
Sounds
just
like one of your old dreams.
Exactly. Maybe in 2016. But it was just so unflattering to see what's happening. Because I mentioned this last week. I was picking the Colts to be potentially the dark horse for the Super Bowl coming out of the AFC, because all they were needing was just a competent quarterback. And Matt Ryan, I still thought he had a lot of value, maybe 2 or 3 years left of good quality play. I thought he would have done to the Colts what Peyton Manning did for the Broncos when he went there. Same thing with Tom Brady going to the Bucs. I thought that was all that they were missing. And then I'm looking at him. I'm like, no, he looks like the same Matty Ice from Atlanta getting sacked 90 times a year. Like, he's just not making the plays. And so I'm still holding out on what the Colts are going to become. I agree with you. They couldn't have had 3 straight bad games, so I guess they were due for one. But I'm just not sold on anybody other than the Bills, maybe the Dolphins, and the Packers seem to be coming up. But other than that, I don't
the Eagles?
lean anyway.
Yeah, I might be all on the Philly bandwagon these days.
Yeah. I could totally get there with you there. They've been steamrolling people. It looks like they have a 1/2 game plan because that's all they need. Once they get to the second half, they're like, we don't even need points. Our defense can handle it. So I stand corrected. They're very much in that conversation.
Their receiving core is, pretty legit. I've always liked Devontae Smith. He had, 150 yards in the first half of that game. And like you said, and then they just kind of bottled it up in the second half and rode to victory. I do have to mention the Vikings and Lions game. We kind of hyped it up. And the Lions did the Lions thing where they played well all the way until the end of the fourth quarter. And you can always feel like a collective sigh in the state of Michigan whenever they choke away a game. It's just like, oh, and the Lions did it again.
Yeah.
That one killed a 16 parlay I had, so I was really not happy with that.
So you were
That one.
sighing right with us.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But the thing is, the Lions are still. In spite of that complete breakdown. Again, I think the Vikings are it's funny. Justin Jefferson seems to have disappeared. I hope he starts playing football again soon. I have him in a few leagues, but at the very least, I still think there's some room for optimism for the Lions generally. But those are the sort of games though that all of the Hard Knocks PR tour stuff that Dan Campbell had. Those are the games that you expect them to grit it out after that performance.
There's the national media is still kind of high on Campbell. He kind of endeared himself. The local media here in Michigan is kind of turning on him. Is listing off all of his late game blunders, and the list is getting longer and longer. And once Detroit turns on a coach, it's kind of hard for him to come back. But it's still a long season. I think I still think they'll probably finish third in the division because Packers do look better than what I thought they would be. And Minnesota's a good team.
They got a rough game coming up in London, though. I think Kirk Cousins could easily perceive that game
how are the
as
lights
something more important than a 1 o'clock kickoff, and that's not good for Vikings fans.
Yeah. And the New Orleans defense isn't bad.
Yeah, I have questions about the Saints offense, though. Without Drew Brees, without Sean Payton, they seem like a completely different team. They don't seem to have any plays designed for Kamara anymore. Like they forgot his talent level. And they're experiencing something similar to Tampa Bay as far as like the revolving door of who's going to be the receiver this week. Jarvis Landry, he's old, he's tough, but he's going to be injury prone. Olave, I think, is going to be their best receiver, but he's unproven because he's a rookie. Michael Thomas is coming back. He's obviously injury prone. He missed 2 years, and I think he's going to miss more than 2 games starting probably this week. I don't know who. And then Jameis, I mean, my God. I don't know how that man still has a starting job in the NFL, but he still does. I'm not a Jameis believer, but it just seems like there's way too many question marks around New Orleans for even Kirk Cousins to mess this one up.
Should we do a pick on this one? Can we do our picks on this one, Mark?
Sure. Who you got?
Well, I agree with Magoo. I have the Vikings in this one because I'm just not sure about Jameis Winston. I like his charisma and his spirit when I see him do pregame stuff, but I'm not big on quarterbacks that throw the exact amount of interceptions as they typically do touchdowns. I will take Vikings.
I think I'm going to go with the Vikings as well. I didn't expect Panthers to beat the Saints. So I know the whole London thing plays its role, but I'm not a believer in the Saints at this point. So I'm going to go with the Vikings. They have the better weapons and offense for sure.
I think I'm going to take the Saints. And the reason being, looking at this 10th overall defensive DVOA and the 11th offensive DVOA for Minnesota. And I like betting on the defense in a situation like this. You have the good defense versus the good offense. I think the preeminent example of this was the Seahawks against the Broncos in the Super Bowl when you had the number 1 defense take on the number 1 offense. Leading up into the Super Bowl, the whole narrative was, how are the Seahawks going to keep up? How are they possibly going to keep pace with such a high flying offense? And I mean, everyone knows how that wound up. Yeah, I think that this game sets up well for minimizing the Jameis's influence on the game by especially because Dalvin Cook is out. Alexander Madison's very good backup. He's a legitimate starter in his own right, but he's not Dalvin Cook. And you're probably going to have Marshawn Lattimore on Justin Jefferson. And those he's going to be either on Jefferson or on Thielen. And either way, I think the Saints have the defensive horses to keep the Vikings contained. And I think that the Saints can do enough on offense to hold pace. I don't know what the line is on this one, but I would take the under, given all of the above and the fact that they're literally traveling around the world to play this game. But yeah, I'm gonna take the Saints.
I'm leaning with the Vikings on this. I think you do bring up some strong points there. But again, it's not only is it a Jameis Winston issue, you have they're not running the ball particularly well right now. I mean, it's they've scored. They had a bad offensive outing against the Buccaneers. Again, Buccaneers are a pretty talented defense. Not trying to take anything away from them. Again, it's still amazing that Winston is playing with 4 fractured vertebrae. Again, I'm interested to see how that travels as well. I'm gonna go with the Vikings, but it is I do like the under though on that one. I think that is a good point there. The over under right now is at 43, higher than the Tennessee Titans Colts game at the afternoon mark there. But
how is that possible? When was the last time that the Titans and Colts didn't turn into like a crazy weird shootout? That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I'm really rooting for in the London game. It's for all the fans that don't know what they're watching, smattered with Jaguars jerseys, with Redskins hats, not knowing that they're not supposed to or not should be wearing that anymore, that are wondering why they're using their hands. I'm rooting for those guys.
having sat in that crowd, that is very, very much what happens. There's
Oh, you've been to a London game?
Oh yeah, when we played
Oh.
the Seahawks, and the British guys behind me, same kind of, they had random jerseys on and stuff, and they kept saying, "But it's called football," and there's the confusion. Finally, he's kicking the ball, and why does this team do that? It was all kinds of stupid questions, and I remember when they sang, they did their national anthem as well as ours, and they something about when it was time for theirs, the guys go, "Don't stand for God save the Queen, she's a cunt." So it was around the time that our players were kneeling for our anthem or whatever, and it was the same kind of. I thought it was funny that they were doing the same thing.
That's pretty good. My English accent usually goes like straight to the down under. Like, I'm pretty impressed with your accent there.
Oh, well.
That was good.
Does Amazon still offer the British narration option? I remember back in the day when Amazon first took over a streaming thing on Thursdays as an option. You could actually
That is
turn on the
brilliant.
British commentary,
I'll have to
which is a
check
lot
that
better
out.
tgoing whatever the running thing is. I need to double check that tomorrow.
I
Do
didn't
they
know
have
that
their own
existed, but I'm
Tony
going to
Romo?
look. I'm going to look for it now.
Yeah.
I did see that I guess their big selling point is that they have the stat cast or whatever they call it, where it kind of looks like a video game where they actually have the icons over the players in real time throughout the play, so you can keep up with them. It seems a little busy, but I think everybody's just trying to do anything that's innovative. You give me British people, yeah, I'd prefer that over graphics any day.
I wonder how often they refer to the pitch, the
Yeah.
British commentators.
Right.
He
The
threw
best
his hanky
commentary
on the pitch.
the best commentary I saw last week was a Spanish commentary during the Panthers game,
Yeah, LaVisca.
and they're freaking out over like that was I'll share it afterwards. Like that was some quality. There's a certain enthusiasm you go with Spanish broadcasters that is missing out of your usual Fox lineup.
Do you remember the one? Did you hear the one that was went viral after a Larry Fitzgerald touchdown? And the guy was just I can't even do it. He was screaming Larry over and over again, but with a Spanish accent. So it's like Lottie. It's pretty funny.
Well, Tua and Burrow played in an epic game back in 2019, LSU versus Bama, and that's who we got tomorrow night. All right, it sounded like some of you were going to pick the Bengals, so let's make our picks for that game.
I'll be super quick. I got the Bengals at home. And we can get into why if we want to later.
Well, go ahead. I'm curious.
ahead.
You might sway me.
I think Tua's injuries are, probably more significant than what they're leading on, because I honestly do believe it was a concussion and not a bruised tailbone or whatever they're calling it. I think that they just played the game of the last 5 years. I think that is gonna, hangover or not, exhaustion, short week, having to travel earlier than they planned because of the hurricane. Cincinnati, much like the Colts, you can't be that bad that many games in a row. Sure, you beat the Jets, but you got to end up doing something against a formidable team. The Dolphins are more than that. And the Dolphins have been playing a little bit above their weight class, I think, so far this year. And maybe it's time that things kind of start to, level out. And it has nothing to do with matchups, who's the guard against the defensive end. None of that. This is a very dumb, meat-headed take of just, feels like it should go the way of the Bengals.
I have nothing to add. I'm picking the Bengals for those exact reasons too, and I need a big game from T. Higgins and Joe Mixon.
I guess I'll jump here. I'm picking the Bengals for the same dumb meat-headed reasons. I honestly, I can't think like so. Those same things. The Dolphins had to leave early. It's a quick turnaround for them. It's a road game. Again, the Bengals were. I just can't imagine that they just collapse like this after a few months of an off season. So I'll go with them this time. If they disappoint me and get crushed, then I'm not picking them again. If it's a close game and they lose, then so be it. But I'm going with the Bengals. And also, the Teddy Bridgewater thing doesn't totally excite me. I thought he was good coming out of college, and then I haven't been super impressed with him since then. When we played teams where he was the backup, once or twice he started, and I was very happy to see that. And so I think the Bengals will be too.
I'm gonna go with the Dolphins just because I'm betting on. I'm just purely infatuated with Mike McDaniels, and I'm just gonna keep going with him until he proves otherwise.
That's very close to where I'm. This is proving to be a more difficult pick than I was expecting, because I think that my heart wants to pick Mike McDaniel, and my head wants to pick all the reasons I gave before: the short week, the exhaustion, all that. I think that I'm gonna take the Dolphins. I can't go against them. I'm gonna take the Dolphins, but I expect I will go heavy on the over, and I think it's going to be it's probably going to be a close game and a shootout. What's the line on it? The line is
looks like Cincinnati by 4.
Cincinnati by 4.
And since he is going to be displaying their new white tiger uniforms,
that's right. Those look sick.
Yeah, those are gonna be sweet.
It's worth noting.
Which forced Joe Burrow to say, "I don't care what I'm playing in, I'll play in a trash bag." When asked if he was consulted on the decision of the helmets. So I don't know what that does to the line, but just take that into consideration when you're making your picks.
Well, kind of fits his play so far this week, or this year too. Like,
I don't know why he would set himself up for that.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to manifest it, Matt,
I'm gonna come back to you because you can tell us if you saw anything from the Seahawks this past weekend, and we can also at the same time preview Seahawks and Lions.
Oof.
It's another shootout. What did I see? I saw the defense is bad. And the defense is bad, and I don't have the numbers here in front of me, but so Pete had said last week that basically he kind of hinted at that they'd been kind of keeping the training wheels on Geno a little bit, but that he was hitting all the throws, that he was doing everything they were asking him to do, so they needed to open up the offense more. And Pete is a notorious coach speak guy. He says lots of stuff, but then it's not necessarily borne out. Their pace of play went from, I want to say it was something like 22nd or 24th in the league to like 11th or 13th, somewhere in there. So they increased their pace of play significantly. And this is in a home game against a team that probably kept coming. It was probably a more talented team. So knowing Pete, I would normally have thought this would be a game where he'd want to be he'd want to give Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny like 35, 40 combined carries and just take the air out of the game. No, they played up, and Geno looked good. You don't want to have him in a place where comes down to the end of the game and he has to make the throws to win the game, because he's not going to do that, as he proved. But he is more than competent to keep them in the game against weak defenses, and that's what they're facing this week. So he's got plenty good targets. He's operating very well within the structure of the offense. You know what hit me this week is that, so the offense he's running, it's Shane Waldron, who was in LA with the Rams under Sean McVay. He's running a very similar offense to what the Rams were running with Jared Goff a couple of years ago. And he's a similar profile player. And Goff was plenty competent within that. He was the same type. Like, you don't want him to be the one who has to win the game for you at the end of the game, but he can keep you in it. And so I think that there's a good chance that they look similar to that this week. My expectation is that you're going to see a lot more Kenneth Walker. He looked like they're starting to get him into some plays. And I think you have 9 opportunities between carries and targets last week, something like that. And I think that you're going to see, especially going up against a really bad run defense. I think Rashad Penny ran for 150 yards and a couple touchdowns against him last season. And Kenneth Walker, I think you're going to start seeing him get unleashed. So I think that this is going to be a back and forth game. Neither defense is going to be capable of slowing down the other offense. Not having DeAndre Swift, assuming that they don't, that, Jamal Williams he's a good goal line back. He's a good receiving back. He's not DeAndre Swift. And then depending on the status of Amon-Ra St. Brown with his ankle injury, that could slow down the Lions a little bit. But this is another one that this one is Lions by 4.5, 48.5. I would be hitting the over on this one as well. And I think that the Lions, I would take the Lions to win, but I might pick the Seahawks to cover.
What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of injuries in the Lions. I mean, they're piling up right now. I also like the fact, I mean, going to the Ken Walker point, because he looked great. Travis Homer, I think, is also injured, right? And so it's going to be needed more opportunities there. Again, I want to root for Dan Campbell, and I like the foundation Lions are building, but I'm kind of leaning with the Seahawks on this one. It's just hard to replace, going from a Swift, Jamal Williams 1-2 punch in the backfield to a Jamal Williams, Craig Reynolds is definitely a major downgrade. You've got, there's a banged up offensive line already there. The defense has not played well all year. Amon-Ra St. Brown again is not going to be at full speed. I'm going to go with the Geno experiment. Let's keep it going one more week.
One point on the defense after the game, Pete talking about the run defense specifically, because Cordero Patterson just ran all over him. And that of all things possible, Pete Carroll does not want a team to come in and run all over him. So that's going to get him in a tizzy. And he said afterwards, I don't remember his exact comments, but something to the effect of, like, he knew exactly what the problem was. It had to do with specific run fits, and it was something schematic that he apparently made it sound like he'd clearly identified what the problem was. They do have some decent players, Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton in there as their linebackers. They're solid linebackers. And then Poona Ford, Al Woods, they've got some hogs on the line. So I could see an outcome where Pete makes some tweaks and all of a sudden the run defense is locked in, and then they try to force Jared Goff to throw his way out of the game. And in an event like that, then that would kind of flip everything on its head. And so if the Seahawks run defense comes out somehow rearranged and set up to win here, then all of a sudden this could go the opposite direction, and it could be more of a smash mouth slog. But I don't really expect that, because when it comes down to it, I think that the Seahawks just lack talent on the defensive end. I do appreciate though that it's helping me not looking like a homer to pick against the Seahawks while somebody else picks for them. So I appreciate that throw.
There you go.
I'm going to pick for them too. I neither one of these teams I would normally pay close attention to, but now that when Matt's over at my house on Sundays, we have the Seahawks on. I'm just going with them because I think overall, neither one of these teams are going to blow the roof off the place, but I think Seahawks will take this.
Where's the game being played?
At Lions.
Then I'm going with Detroit. I was going to simply go with Detroit because I think if they have Swift and Brown, they're just a better team. And without them, they have to completely re-scheme. And if they had to take that on the road, then I would pick the Seahawks. I did pick the Seahawks last week. And
you can lament about your Falcons if you want. Yeah, take some time here.
Yeah, well, we'll get there. But no, I think the home team probably has the leg up just for the fact that you take away their two best players, they're probably closer in talent with the Seahawks, and then it's just a coin flip on home field. That's as simple as it gets for me. I think that Williams is a good enough back to withstand one game and perform pretty high. Hawkinson is going to have to be relied on a little bit more. The Seahawks, they did make Kyle Pitts look a little more like the Kyle Pitts that everybody was hoping. So at home. Maybe Hawkinson becomes the dude in lieu of St. Brown being out. So yeah, I got to go with the Lions here.
I'm gonna go with the Lions as well. There's no number to back up what I'm about to say. This is all feelings ball. I feel like the Lions are about to experience a season where they lose a game like they just did to the Vikings, and they win a close one, and then they lose another one. It's just going to be a back and forth thing to 8 and 9, and that's the way this Lions season is going to go.
It's interesting. I was just looking at the division there, and the Lions are in 4th place in the division. It's 3 teams are 2-1, and the Lions are 1-2. The Lions have a +2 point differential, and the only team that's negative is Chicago. They've got a -5. But looking at the points for from in order, so Vikings, Packers, Bears, Lions in order, it's Vikings have 58 points scored, Packers have 48 points scored, Bears have 52 points scored, the Lions have 95. They have almost doubled up the other teams in their division. They've just also doubled up their points allowed compared to the other teams in the division.
Yeah. And they're going to be an interesting team to watch, but no team that anybody should have expectations or hopes. You know, as a Falcons fan, I know exactly what that's all about. And I see a kindred spirit in the Lions. You know, their fan base is getting a little hopeful right now, and it's cute, but I wouldn't. I would just enjoy the show for their ability to put points on the board.
It's been 50 years of futility here. They do get hopeful, but it's kind of a sad hopeful.
Yeah,
it is interesting though. So think about if they didn't collapse against the Vikings last week, which I mean I get it. Though that was in Minnesota. They've played the Eagles closer than any team so far. So if you're looking at a benchmark against a marquee team out there, I mean, that was a 35-38 game right there. The national perception, I mean, the Lions would be looked at the way the Jaguars, I think, are being looked at this week, if not again for that embarrassing, fourth quarter collapse, which you can't exactly wish away, but
Buck, is your you already kind of alluded to picking the Raiders, but is it all feelings ball, or you got something to back it up?
No, there's a lot of feelings ball going on, and it's I'm on some hopium, I suppose. and honestly, if this were the following week when we're playing the Chiefs, I probably would not be picking the Raiders. But the Broncos have been I haven't seen a star quarterback get booed when he first comes to a team like Russ was getting booed. And then it's funny, they flip on a dime, he does something well, and I was they love him. But at some point, it sounded like they were chanting the backup's name there in Denver. But and that's not really
their backup is.
I couldn't remember. I was like,
no one does.
Who's their backup? And that's not a knock on Russ. It's just I don't know if it's taking it's taking Derek and Josh McDaniels a little bit to get on the same page too. But this is a must win. If the Raiders lose this one, then it's not going to go well. Mark Davis already had a face-to-face with Josh McDaniels before Josh even got to the podium to have his post-game press conference. So we have to win. I mean, I know some of you assholes are going to pick the Broncos here, but we have to win this, and there's just no other way. We have swept the Broncos, I think, the last 3 years. So I know they did not have Russell Wilson at quarterback, but so far that's not affecting a whole lot on their team. And we have to win this. There's just no other option. So I'm picking the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't wish a face-to-face conversation with Mark Daniels again on anyone. I mean, it just seems like
Mark Davis.
All in all. Mark Davis conversation with anyone. It just seems like an unpleasant experience all the way around.
Yeah, that thing just throws me off every time.
Yeah.
It feels like a lost scene from Red Dragon or something like that.
A friend of mine from Seahawks Twitter had this amazing viral tweet a couple years ago where he put a picture of John Gruden next to a picture of Mark Davis. Yeah. And he said that Mark Davis looks like microwaved John Gruden leftovers.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to take the Raiders too, though. And it's a sort of situation where I would take the Raiders against just about any team out there this week, just because I don't think that they're the worst team in the league. Like, it's just one of those just pure on, like, do I think does this team feel like an 0-4 team? I don't think that's the case at all. And so I just, at a pure probability at that point, I'm going to hammer the Raiders. I think they're in multiple parlays already. I'm going to be hammering that one all weekend.
Yeah, and I'm going to back up exactly what those said. I believe, and I'm not a smart man. I think I've put that on full display, but I believe
Look at his Twitter handle.
yes, it's accurate. Out of the mouth of the great Jerry Glanfield, the NFL stands for not for long, and I don't believe that the Raiders can be this bad for that long. Like, they have to win, because just like what those said, they're not an 0-4 team. They're due for a rebound, and it has to happen. I'm going to keep picking them until they do win. I'm going to go opposite of Buck. I'm going to keep picking them until they win. So that's the reason why. Again, not very deep over here, just feelings ball.
I am going to pick the Raiders as well, so it's going to be all up to Matt to be that one a-hole that Buck was alluding
We know who
to.
Matt's picking.
You guys have got me thinking.
I wonder, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Garrett, the coach. Is it Garrett? He's the coach
Jason
at.
Garrett.
No, not Jason Garrett. What's the coach's name at Denver?
Nate Hackett.
Hackett.
Nathaniel.
Yeah. I'm not sure he can hack it.
This guy seems like he's in over his head, to be honest. And Broncos are coming off a very uninspiring win where maybe kind of lucked into it with some bad play by the 49ers. And I think the Raiders are due, as Magoo and Buck have been alluding to.
Very well.
Here it comes. Was that score 10-11, Mark? With the Niners Raiders? Is that what you? I mean, excuse me, Niners and Broncos. That was
It
10-11.
Yeah.
Yep, second time in NFL history that's ever happened.
What's funny is that same night I was watching the just kind of keeping track of the score of the Mariners game, because here the Mariners are they got their playoff push. They've actually got a legit. I think they got like a 99% chance of making the playoffs, and they're
I
doing
didn't know that
everything
they
they
were in the
possibly
picture.
can. Yeah, they're doing
Wow.
everything they possibly can to not be in the picture. They've been at like 99.8% for like a week and a half or 2 weeks, but they're in the worst stretch of the season right now. They're just falling on their face. They got a bunch of injuries and everything. They had I think they're playing the Royals, who have like 60 wins, and they were up 11-2 in the sixth inning, and they lost 13-12.
Yeah.
And so the Mariners lost 13-12, and they outscored the Broncos and the Niners that day. Anyways, so here's what I've seen so far. Coming into the season, the Broncos didn't play any of their starters in the preseason. So Russ is on a new team for effectively the first time in his career. He's gone to his first team, but he hasn't moved to a new team ever. So you've got a combination of first time on a new team in his career, adapting to new teammates, didn't play in the preseason. First game out was a game that really, I think that have all the dynamic the same. And if it was the Bills or the Eagles, I think they would have struggled in Seattle because of that environment, because of the emotional charge of that environment, an extremely hostile crowd, being the first time you've ever played together, rookie head coach, all of those. I think all of those dynamics put together, that's a recipe for a team struggling. And Aaron Rodgers, I think people forget that Aaron Rodgers, his first like half of the season with Nathaniel Hackett, struggled. This is where people were like, Aaron Rodgers is washed. He's done. He's cooked. This just isn't going to work out. And then everything started clicking, and he turned into Aaron Rodgers under Nathaniel Hackett, which is what got Nathaniel Hackett hired in Denver. I think that one thing that was very encouraging to me this last week was seeing that Hackett hired an in-game strategy expert assistant coach. Guy used to be with the Ravens. He's a pretty old guy. He's pretty seasoned. But that, to me, I heard people that were criticizing it, and I'm like, this is a very positive sign to me. So this is a sign to me of a coach who's like, okay, clearly this is something that I'm not good at. This is my first time on this job. I'm learning that this is something I'm not good at. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to pay handsomely to hire the best in the business to help me take over this. So the guy was in the booth this last game. Not much changed, but again, their first game together, that kind of thing is going to get sorted out along the way. I think, again, coming back to it, the Denver defense is good. It's very good. And I think that the Raiders offense hasn't shown me enough to tell me that they're going to run away with this game against the Denver defense. And Russ has shown me enough in his career that if you don't run away from him with the game, then more often than not, he's going to take it from you at the end of the game. And that's what I'm anticipating here. I think it's going to be a tight game because the Raiders are fighting for their lives. And to an extent here, Denver, I mean, they're lucky that they're 2-1. I mean, they're 2-1 because of their defense, so it's not entirely lucky, but they're lucky that they're 2-1. So they're not entirely fighting for their lives. If they lose this game, it's not the end of the world. But if they lose this game, the fans are going to be very unhappy. It's going to be dark and tense in that locker room. So they're going to be playing with a fire under their asses as well. This is going to be a tense game. I think division rivalry, a lot at stake for both teams. It's probably going to be a pretty ugly game, I would imagine. I would imagine it's going to be low scoring. But at the end of the game on the line, I can't think of many people in the last 10 or 15 years of NFL history who I'd rather have with the ball in his hand than Russell Wilson. So all those things being said, I'm going to take the Broncos.
There it is.
Where's that game being played? Is it in Denver?
No,
No, it's in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
there'll be a
So
good
here-
smattering of Denver fans there. I'm sure they're that's a wealthy enough fan base to want to go party in Vegas.
Yeah.
not far,
Well,
too.
and I got to say real quick about the analyst hiring that you were saying that Nathaniel Hackett did. I don't know who that person was, but that's a playbook directly out of the Nick Saban Kirby Smart playbook. If you look at some of the most successful, and I know it's college is different than pros, but he's a first-time coach. So he, having a stacked roster of smarter people behind you can only breed good things. It's not going to make him worse. I didn't know about that, but as soon as you said that, I immediately was thinking of Saban and Smart because they have former coaches that are analysts that their entire job is just to scheme and scout their upcoming opponents. And
I'm assuming
immediately-
Scott Frost is going to be at Bama at some point.
He's got to go through the Saban's rehab, coach rehab.
Rehabilitation program he's got going there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. The guy comes from the Ravens.
Yep.
Michigan actually they brought in a numbers guy last year from the Ravens because Michigan football has been stuck in the 70s for forever. So they thought they'd bring in some analytics guy, and he seems to be making a pretty big difference for them.
If you're going to hire a grown up in the room, Baltimore is one of the best places to do it.
Yeah.
It's Jerry Rosberg. He 66 years old, well-respected assistant coach, longtime special teams coordinator, started in the NFL with Cleveland from 2001 to 2006, Falcons in 2007, Ravens from 2008 to 2018. He was Baltimore's associate head coach and helped the team reach great success, including winning the Super Bowl in 2013. So his job is to advise. He's a senior assistant who's tasked with advising head coach Nathaniel Hackett on game management operations.
Yeah.
I would say it's a smart hire.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to turn out negatively. That's probably a smart decision. I just don't know if it pays off this early.
Not this week.
Yeah. Not this week. Well, Bills Ravens should be a good game.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This might be the best one. Talk about over under. I assume you Vegas odds guys. Are we taking the over on this one? What is it?
It is. So Bills by 3, 51.5. Wow. Bills. So the Bills they're essentially saying usually home field advantage is 3 points. So they're saying that the Bills would be favored by a touchdown on a neutral field.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that. That's very interesting.
I think I might know why.
Do tell.
Do tell.
Magoo.
The Bills safeties are injured.
That's true.
And
Like
that was a
Hydra.
turning point that I thought that I might have flipped last week to choose the Dolphins, but it's kind of like I'm going with the Bills until they show me different. The Ravens have extremely fast wideouts with Bateman and Duvernay.
Mhm.
He gets overlooked, by the way. I don't know why, but he's one of the highest producers in fantasy, at least from a point perspective. He's got a touchdown in every game. He actually has 4 with 103-yard return. They can get behind the Bills' secondary. And I think much like the Dolphins could have, I think if it wasn't so damn hot, that might become an issue down the stretch in that game. So I could see where the Ravens have more of a shot going in than a lot of people might expect. I don't know if it's enough for me to pick the Ravens, but I think that there's an aspect of the game that's probably not getting talked about because of all the star power closer to the quarterback that is going to gobble up all the attention.
The what I was seeing is the spread is going in the opposite direction. The spread is saying that the Bills would be favored by a touchdown on a neutral field, and I don't think the spread is that. I think that the teams are much closer than that. I'm surprised that they would be given the Bills that much.
I'm not. I got the Bills in this one, and there's something that no one's brought up yet. We all saw. Do you think an offensive coach is going to go through what that offensive coordinator went through at the end of that Bills game? We all saw what he did.
It was awesome.
Oh, Ken Dorsey, yeah.
That's going to be shown all week. And there's going to be photos of it all across the locker room. The Bills are going to win this one because just for that simple gesture at the end of the game, we all loved it. And just for that guy doing that and making my week when we lost as a Raider fan, I'm picking the Bills because that was the best part of last week. And it's been on memes across the internet now. I love it.
I just want to know whose job it was to put his hand over the camera.
Right.
And be like, all right.
Gotta stop this.
That's enough. Our PR firm is like, would somebody please just block the camera? I don't care if he destroys more Microsoft Edges than Tom Brady would in 15 years, but just don't put it on TV.
Yes.
I think the Bills are going to win that game too. I just saw I can't remember where I saw it. It was like, who's the MVP of the league so far, Lamar or Allen? Which I think Hurts might have something to say about that himself. But I think out of those two, Allen is the better quarterback. I think the Bills, even without their safeties, still have the better team than the Ravens. I still don't trust the Ravens a whole lot.
Yeah, same here for some reason. I don't know why, especially after seeing Lamar's numbers last week. That was nuts. But I think there's something instinctive here. I think I like throw first, run second, rather than run first, throw second. Maybe that's old school or something. I think at this point we are learning if you just stand there in the pocket like Matt Ryan and Tom Brady seems to be doing, that's not the future of the NFL. But I think Josh Allen types are the future.
Yeah, I'm going with the Ravens on this one. One of my favorite stats is that Lamar Jackson is the number 1 fantasy quarterback right now, and the number 5 quarterback would be Lamar Jackson without rushing yards. I think Lamar has always been kind of underrated as a passer, even going back to him coming out of Louisville. He's just playing outstanding. He's really working for that fully guaranteed contract right now. You also have Ronnie Stanley coming back, which I think will help solidify that offensive line. So it feels weird to bet on the Bills losing twice. Again, kind of gives me a little bit of a bad feeling there, but I'm going to go with the Ravens on this one. I think it's I'm just excited to see the real thing. I'm taking the over in the game. I think the 51.5 is way too low for a Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson game, particularly when you have injuries in both secondaries. But I'm going to go with the Ravens on this one.
Do you know if Marlon Humphrey is back and healthy?
He was not on the injury report today. So,
okay.
Marcus Peters had a rest day on Monday, did not practice today. And then their other cornerback, Jalen Armour-Davis, did not practice today. So you still have 2 cornerbacks injured, but Humphrey is not on the list.
Okay. Here's a stat for you. This was before last week. So first 2 games of the season, Ravens defense with Marlon Humphrey on the field, allowed 0.23 EPA per play, 6.5 yards per play. Ravens defense without Marlon Humphrey on the field allowed 1.11 EPA per play, 12.1 yards per play. That's so having him available is a big deal, especially I'd imagine, I don't know how much he shadows, but I'd imagine that he is going to be tasked with Stephon Diggs. And so maybe get your Gabe Davis shares.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take the Ravens as well. Like you said, though, it feels weird to bet on the Bills losing 2 games, but I mean, hey, this is how the schedule makers laid it out here. I think that the Bills defense is already having Micah Hyde out for the season is going to be a big deal. He and Jordan Poyer had played together for some ungodly number of games in a row, like 4 seasons in a row worth of games or something like that. And their communication and their chemistry back there was a huge part of the Bills' defense. Now the Bills still have a very good defense. Their pass rush is just insane. Like I think before last week I saw a stat that was something like their pressure rate was the highest in the league and their blitz rate was the lowest, or it was close to that. So they're generating a ton of pressure without blitzing. That's how good they have. Very, very good defensive line. So, but what breaks the tie for me here is that it's in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson is just playing just out of his goddamn mind right now. And then the Bills are going to have, I think the Bills are going to have a hangover from the Miami game. I think that was a gut shot of a loss. And then, like we talked about, their defense was gassed. So I'm going to take the Ravens.
I hope it's entertaining for the watchers of the show to be like, we got the numbers, analytics guys here on the bottom making these picks. And then we're all up here like, yeah, we saw Lamar Jackson go 7 for 24 4 years ago in the playoff games, and we decided he can't ever throw. It's a nice juxtaposition.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably going to go. I really don't have an honest leaning either way, but because we're on a show where we got to make picks, I'm going to go with the Ravens because a couple of reasons. They're the home team. The injuries kind of balance out. I do believe one team has a greater hangover than the other, that being the Bills. Also, if this hurricane ever gets its shit together and actually starts like moving north, it could be raining pretty heavy in Baltimore come game time. That's going to reduce it down to a running game. And I got to put more stock in Lamar's ability to run than the entire Bills team ability to run. And I don't have any other reasons to mention other than that. But if it's raining and the air game isn't able to get going, the ball is slick, the Bills are hungover, you got to trust in Lamar.
Lamar Jackson or Devin Singletary? Who do you pick?
Exactly.
So my hope for the Buccaneers, the Sunday night game, they're playing the Chiefs, is that it's a carbon copy of the Patriots going to Kansas City in 2014. Where
I hope so too.
The Chiefs destroy the Pats in that game in 2014, like 42-14.
Oh, never
yeah. Brady's done. People are talking about starting Garoppolo over Brady, and then the Patriots rip off a whole bunch of wins, and they, I think they beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl that year. You can check my
2014
math on that map. Yeah,
2014. Yeah.
So
was that
this
the
is my
season
hope.
after the Chiefs injured Brady for the season?
No, that was actually in 2008.
Oh shit! Yeah. Like that'll make you feel old.
6 years before then.
Well,
And I'm
Matt
talking about a
Cassie
game
came
that
in.
was almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
No, I think the Chiefs are going to kill the Bucs. I don't think it's going to end the Bucs season though. That receiving core is just super depleted. Brady's in a pissy mood. It's just not setting up well for the Bucs right now. But I don't think, since they're also in a weak division, I still actually think they win that division eventually and get their stuff together.
Where's the game being played?
This one is in Tampa. Well, Minneapolis maybe.
Uh-huh.
Neutral field.
What's the injury report on this one though? What's the state of Tampa Bay's wide receivers?
You can count Godwin out. I don't think that dude's
Yeah.
going to play until Halloween.
Oh, Mike Evans is back, isn't he?
Yeah,
Mike
he'll be
Evans is back. Julio's practicing. Russell Gage is there. They're starting to come back, but I'll let Tho find the actual officials. I'm just going off of hearsay.
Godwin had a
Cole Beasley
limited
season.
practice. Gage had limited practice. The only one that didn't, the only wide receiver that didn't practice was Rashad Perriman. So if you're factoring him in your lineups, you're rethinking that
He's
one.
a difference maker.
But everyone else had a limited practice, including Julio.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers stars are gonna show up for this one, minus Godwin. I got the Bucks, especially if it's in Minnesota, because both teams, won't have home field advantage. They will both be kind of out of it. The Bucks were already moving around because of the hurricane anyway, so they might be a few days ahead of Kansas City in that aspect, especially when you're anticipating being home all week and you got to move last minute. If the game is played in Minnesota, I take the Bucks. If it's played in Kansas City, I'd take the Chiefs. I don't know if there's a better way to cop out and not make a call, but I just did it.
We'll allow it.
Okay.
I got you know what? I hope you're right. I hope the Bucks win this. I'm going for the Bucks. I'm cheering for them all the way in this one. I just don't feel it happening. Does that mean this is a feels pick? But I think the Chiefs, like we talked about, we're not 0-4. I can't, or you don't want to pick the Bills losing 2 in a row. I can't imagine picking the Chiefs to lose 2 in a row. Brady's tantrums, at some point it looked like he's just emotional and just passionate, and now it looks kind of put on and weird. Something's not right in Buccaneer land, in my opinion, and I think all is probably okay in Chiefs land, unfortunately. So I'm picking the Chiefs in this, although I will be heavily rooting for Tom Brady and the Bucks.
Do you think that the blow up between Mahomes and Bieniemy maybe?
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
Is there anything there as far as
I didn't hear about that.
not just trouble in Tampa Bay, but also potential trouble in the offensive meeting rooms in Kansas City? Going into halftime in Indy, Mahomes wanted to keep going for it, and Bieniemy was like, "Nah, let's take this horrible first half into the locker room and try to regame." And they kind of got into a little bit of a back and forth.
All week the NFL talking heads were saying Bieniemy is the enemy. So I mean, I hope that's the case, and I'm rooting for dysfunction in Kansas City, but until they can prove that Andy Reid's not just a brilliant coach and Patrick Mahomes is unfortunately an amazing quarterback, that they can get past all of this, I think they will.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs in this one, though. Donovan Smith did have some limited participation as well. He was kind of a late add. They were a lot more sure about Godwin practicing than Donovan Smith earlier today. So it'd be interesting to see if he actually ends up playing. But that offensive line definitely needs some help as well. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this ends up being like a classic Tom Brady performance where like it's people cutting him out, and this is where he just kind of snaps and goes off for 5 touchdowns and just plays hero ball. But I'm going with Kansas City on this one.
It's interesting. There's no over under. Yeah. I wonder if that's because they don't have the actual venue established yet.
Yeah.
Possibly.
On Bet Online, they have it at 45.
45. Okay. Man,
Over.
There's some tough picks this week.
Yeah, not very comfortable. I don't come into this week very confident in any of these matchups because I feel like I've been just abused by poor performance by good teams and just outshining their capabilities going into the season by bad teams. It's very weird. This is why I like college. The good teams stomp the bad teams by at least 4 touchdowns, so you're not left wondering, do I know football anymore?
Unless they're playing Kent State.
I was going to say.
Though
You're just
I
playing
wasn't
around with Kent State.
if you're not working in Georgia minus 28 over Mizzou in every single
I was going to bring it up.
You're doing it poorly. Like that should be in every single parlay because that is an automatic hit. Go aggressive on that one game. There's no way that Kirby Smart doesn't win by, I think, 6 touchdowns on Saturday.
Georgia gave you a heads up with Samford. They said we will not play out of our boots for terrible teams. Our players have already shown you they don't want to show up for these games. I don't know. We can definitely get into some Georgia talk because I mean it's on my chest and behind me and all that. And though I know that they are your team as well, I would love to do a college football talk, but carry on the picks.
I think I'm the only one who hasn't picked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take the Bucks because the Bucks defense, it's the number 1 defense by DVOA so far this year, I think. Let me look. Defensive DVOA. Yep. Tampa Bay, number 1 defense. 27th offense. I don't think that offense number is legit. I don't think that this offense is actually that bad. I think that when I love me some Cole Beasley season. I think that I would love to see what the odds would be for Cole Beasley leading the Bucks in receptions over the rest of the season. But yeah, I don't think that the offense's struggles the last few games have been legit. I think this is like Tom Brady throwing to fucking alligator arms, Scotty Miller and Rashad Perriman, and I don't think that the offense is going to continue being as bad as it has been. This strikes me as a get right spot, especially if Mike Evans is back, and then if Julio and or Godwin plays, then that's just gravy to me. I think that this is two good defenses having it out, but especially if it's in a dome, especially if it's in Minnesota, then I'm gonna take the Bucks. That's not a confident pick, but I don't want to bet against Tom Brady in this situation, and I don't want to bet against the Bucks defense because the Bucks defense is legit.
Now you make me feel bad. I'm the biggest Brady fanboy on the show, and I picked against him.
I picked against the Seahawks. You picked against me. Yeah.
Well, Justin thought I was going to ignore this, but I'm not ignoring this. They're not losing to Iowa, Justin.
That would require Michigan scoring 7 points or less because Iowa can't get over 9.
Thank you. It is at Iowa. I mean, top 5 teams go to die at Iowa. Ohio State still did. Michigan did it a few years ago in 2016. They were undefeated. Number 2 lost a stupid 12-10 game. But it's not at night. And usually Iowa's home games where they do pull off these upsets are night games, and it's a blackout. Michigan had an uninspiring effort against Maryland this past week, but they didn't play anybody. This is the first team they played with a pulse all year. So I kind of expected a bit of a struggle. And then if you look at the numbers of that game, Michigan still outgained them like 500 to 350 or whatever in total yards. So like Magoo said, Michigan's going to win, and they're going to hold Iowa to a touchdown. Maybe it might be 2 field goals. 27-6 is going to be the final.
Field goal to safety.
There we go.
Very boring 27-6. They won't get to 27 until 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter because it's going to be a slugfest.
Yeah, it'll be ugly in the first half going into the fourth quarter probably, but I think Michigan pulls it out, much like the Big Ten championship game last year, where it was like 14-3 at halftime and ended up 42-3.
Whoops.
All right, do we want to do the Monday night game?
Yeah. Rams Niners.
Oh.
Start us off, Matt.
All right. Well, they've got the over-unders at 42.5. Niners by 1.5. And it's at Niners. I mean, can I root for the asteroid to hit the field?
Well, NASA just blew up that asteroid, so maybe some
you get some debris down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could spare Cooper Cup. I like him, but particularly target.
He'll
Aaron
outrun
Donald.
it. He'll outrun an asteroid. Don't worry. He'll be.
He'll
be
catch
safe.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's a crapshoot to me. I mean, yeah, Niners by 1.5. I think I'll go with the Niners on this one, just because they're at home. They've got the better defense. Rams are looking. Yeah, Rams are. It seems like they are a year late. It seems like they missed their peak, and I don't know about Matt Stafford. I don't know if that man has that dude's body has taken an awful lot of hits. And then the offensive line is not good this year. The 49ers are going to harass the hell out of him. And I suspect now this is going to be the 1.5 games with Garoppolo reunited with Shanahan. This is going to be their second full game back together, and I think that they're going to be jiving a little bit better than they were last week. And the Rams defense, Aaron Donald aside, the Rams defense is not the Broncos defense. So I think that the 49ers offense is going to be more mobile. I think it's going to be more effective than it was before. Trent Williams is going to be out. That's a big deal. The 49ers offensive line has a lot of question marks as well. So I don't expect it to be a pretty game. I think that this is the type of week where if I was playing the showdown slate on DraftKings, I would probably have a lot of defense at captain because I think that there's probably going to be a pretty good number of turnovers in this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one defensive touchdown. Both quarterbacks are going to be harassed. But at the end of the day, 49ers are the home team, and they've got the better defense. So I'll take the 49ers.
Did the Niners beat the Rams both times in the regular season last year, and then they lost in the playoffs, or they only played once in the regular season?
No, they had to play twice.
Yeah, they had to play twice. Yeah. So
I don't
think so. Because it was a close. The playoff game was close too, right? It was,
it was Jimmy G collapsing in the
fourth and then that 49ers safety dropping the interception.
Yep. But I don't know. Anytime there's a point spread of 1 point, anything less than 3 when you're at home tells me that Vegas is actually choosing against you. And I'm gonna go and pick the Rams because I think if it comes down to a shootout, I trust the Rams playmakers going against San Francisco's defense more than I trust San Francisco's offense. Jalen Ramsey and Darian Kendrick and the guys that they have covering for the Rams. I just trust I trust Cooper Kupp more than I trust Deebo Samuel. Tyler Higbee, or is that his name?
Yep.
The tight end. He's been playing great. George Kittle is still working his way back in. There's still questions at running back. Both teams are figuring out which one's going to be their guy. Is Cam Akers going to be the guy? Is Henderson going to be the guy? Is Jeff Wilson? I guess he kind of has to be the guy. I like Stafford more than Jimmy G, especially because I think Jimmy G feels awkward, even though he's back with the team that he never left. I think that there's just some weirdness there. You don't win a Super Bowl and then fall off, not being able to win games on the road. I got to go with the Rams just because I think they're a more solid unit right now based off injuries and how long, I think that the current starting lineup for the Rams had more time to gel than the 49ers. I think they're a little kind of getting pieced together. I don't know if they have that cohesiveness yet. If it was later in the season, I would probably pick the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Rams too. I don't think they overcome this tenuous situation between Shanahan and Jimmy G. Like I could see a situation where the Rams jump out to a lead and the Niners have 2 3-and-outs in a row or whatever because of stupid play calling, according to Jimmy G. And things just kind of fall apart quickly. I'm gonna take the Rams.
I'm going to go with the Rams too. And I mean, the 49ers offensive line was already having issues before the Trent Williams injury. And if Jimmy G is a quarterback, I think that they need that sort of classic sort of Shanahan run production for him to be able to pull off, kind of play within himself. And I don't know going to be well. Jeff Wilson ownership in fantasy leagues. I'm not, particularly excited about that aspect of it. I think the Rams defense is good enough to kind of get things done. And, Stafford's arm hasn't fallen off completely yet. Has been, particularly with the struggles that Justin Jefferson has had, where he was supposed to kind of be filling that role at the Vikings off. And just a reminder that kind of Cooper Kupp is in the league himself right now in just terms of consistency. That connection is something special. So I think it scares me because I do think that there's something to be said about kind of the coaching showdown there. And Shanahan has been very successful against Sean McVay teams, but I'm going with the Rams.
I got the Rams too. I think without that starting left tackle on the Niners, Aaron Donald's going to go crazy. Jimmy G said it himself. Their plays suck. There's for whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan can't find the spot for Jimmy G in this lineup. But I think there's an issue there. There's some kind of butting heads. Cooper Kupp's my favorite wide receiver in the NFL. And I think he's going to go off, and I think the Rams will win this one.
I wish I said it as good as Buck just did.
I've been practicing all week.
You guys almost talked me out of my pick.
Well, somebody's got to. Yeah, what's up?
Magoo and Tho, I probably won't be paying too much attention to this game because it's on at the same time as the Michigan game, but I've never been more excited about an Ole Miss Kentucky matchup before. Who wins that game?
So you got a couple things happening right now. Go ahead, though. Go ahead and throw it.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you got a couple things going right now. You have a Kentucky team that has been building up like a slow-moving rocket, if there's such a thing, over the last 4 or 5 years. Ever since Benny Snell was their running back, ever since Stoops has gotten there, they have been building. They've done what Butch Jones claimed to want to do at Tennessee, and that is build this program brick by brick and slowly get the team going in a direction. And they've sustained it for more than just a couple years. And then you have this flash, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, throwing the double birds. I got the best offensive mind in the world. I believe it's being played at Kroger Field, which, even though it's a smaller stadium in the SEC, Kentucky loves their football, and that is not to be taken lightly. I don't think there's many Ole Miss fans who are going to make that trip. I got Kentucky. Mainly because Georgia plays Kentucky this year. We don't play Ole Miss, and I need Kentucky to be the highest ranked team when Georgia stomps the ever-loving shit out of them. So go blue.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree there. I think that it's interesting because Mississippi right now is a 7-point favorite against Kentucky, and I'm just not buying it. I mean, Ole Miss has hardly even played a game so far this year. They blew out Tech recently. They haven't really had. I think a 28-10 game against Troy, which might be a better team than what you have in Atlanta right now. Anyway, Kentucky had that. Florida isn't particularly aging quite so well. Ole Miss will have an actual quarterback behind center, so that's already an advantage that Florida didn't have. But I'm going to go with Stoops as well in this one. I think Kentucky's got something. Kentucky's like the perfect team in the East because they're built to be baby Georgia, and I'm not intimidated by them at any extent of the imagination. But I think they're just a solid quality team, kind of like I think Arkansas in a little bit the way they're being built right now. And I think they're going to win in the trenches.
100%. They're like the hired hand. It's like, just go knock off these other teams for me. Soften them up before I get there. And by the way, when it's time for us to go, I'm going to fuck you up. But until then, go do my dirty work while I can't be there for that.
Yeah, there's one other college game that stood out to me this week. It was, I want to pick NC State to beat Clemson. Clemson hasn't lost at home, since like 2016? Like Clemson is
been
not
that long?
I think they have a pretty long winning streak at.
You're probably right, but
Yeah.
it just feels like that should have happened already by now.
I mean, we've talked about this before, or at least Tho has on there when we did our college preview a few weeks ago. Like, this isn't the Clemson of old, but I'm going to still pick Clemson over NC State only because it's at home.
Wake Forest should have won last week if they weren't Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in Clemson. I remember going to the game in Charlotte, and Tho, you might have been there start of the year last year, and I was concerned with Georgia matching up against them. I don't know. We got a lot of question marks. Clemson, they've got the pedigree, and all they've shown me is that DJ Ukulele can't play a note. He's not good.
Nice.
Dabo does not utilize what is every successful college coach's best friend, and that's the transfer portal. He won't do it. It's not that he can't do it. He has flat out said, I only want players that want to play for me. That has to bite him in the ass eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know if NC State is good enough to be that team to punch it through, but Clemson is a dead man walking program until they change their philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
They just aren't in a good enough conference to have it proven to them yet.
Yeah, I really wish Wake pulled off that game last week. I picked Wake to win the ACC at 20-1, so that would have been a great win right there. I don't think NC State's going to be the team, but I do think that Clemson's going to end up losing 1 or 2 this year.
Yeah, I do like Wake and NC State. Both of their offensive styles are fun to watch, but Wake sort of just went into the show once they went into overtime last week. I didn't understand that at all. Ran the ball 6 straight times.
Well, I
They
think
had- Just real quick, they had every opportunity to win it. Even once they got to overtime, they just forgot how to play coverage and were they were Wake Forest. I'm not going to spend too much effort trying to defend Wake Forest when, it's kind of like trying to defend Missouri against Auburn right now. It's like, well, there wasn't a good option. Clemson probably was the better team, but Wake Forest could have and should have won that game the way the game was going.
So the college football game I'm most interested in, outside the Georgia one, obviously for selfish reasons, is they have Arkansas at 17.5 underdogs in Fayetteville against Alabama, and I think this Alabama team is not the Alabama team of old, and I would definitely be taking Arkansas with the points, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they end up winning outright.
Yeah, my only question is how many times does Alabama of 2022 have to get exposed before people don't give them the benefit of the doubt anymore? Texas, that lost to Texas Tech, took them the distance and should have won, much like Wake Forest against Bama, and they couldn't because they're Texas and they were on a backup quarterback.
Right.
But Alabama they aren't as stacked as I thought they would be coming in. They have issues on their lines, which is going to negate the talent on the outsides. And I'm not a believer for selfish reasons as well, but I think Bama will, instead of the typical year where Bama starts off slow and they show that they get better and stronger as the year goes on, I think they're going to get exposed because of teams like Arkansas and even LSU when they get together. Because I think LSU is on the way up, and I think Alabama is flat. That's my hope anyway.
A little bit of hopium there.
Oh, yeah. It's like asking me to pick about the Falcons. Last week it was like Seahawks are going to win because fuck the Falcons. They're my team. They will always be my team, but it doesn't mean I have to think they're going to win or even cheer for them to win when they you don't do 2016 and expect your fans to all of a sudden turn face and start rooting for you until you start making some good decisions from the front office down to the coordinators, and they haven't done that yet. So I think a fan should also be stern with their own team and not just have blind faith and hope. If you're fucking up, I as a fan should be the first one to call you out. This is why I love Denver fans. The fact that they were counting down the play clock and cheering for the backup quarterback. I love the Denver fans. I love fan bases that deal in reality and not, talking about how good their team is, no matter what their record is.
That's the Cowboys.
Exactly. Yeah. Without a doubt.
Anything else, college or pro wise?
I'm looking forward to. I never thought I would say this because I don't follow NFC, and I never cared about the Jags. But I think the Jags at Eagles should be interesting.
Oh, I forgot to even bring that up.
I've got the Eagles picked because it's hard to pick against them at this point. But man, I was happy to see the Jaguars looked really good against the Chargers last week, and of course I was rooting for him in that case. But I do like watching Trevor Lawrence. You know, I have a close friend that is a diehard Jags fan, and it's hard not to feel for them. He told me something like the coach right now, Doug Peterson. I think he's like the 4th most wins in Jaguar history or something crazy.
With
like
2
that.
wins tied for 4.
What? Yeah. So even that stat is heartbreaking, but Trevor Lawrence looks like pretty damn good. But you know, Hurts looks really awesome too. So I have the Eagles picked. I think that'll be an interesting game to see and kind of see where the Jags level out. My friend is so used to seeing his team lose. He's like, well, the Chargers had this guy out and this guy out. It's like, dude, you beat the Chargers. You killed them. Just be happy. And that says a lot. So we shall see.
Yeah, I got to echo a lot of what you just said. I love what the Jags are becoming. I love James Robinson, Trevor Lawrence, you know, their receivers. Obviously, they were the smartest team in the room by picking Walker with the first pick from the no-name defense. Because I'll be honest, I was a little shocked. I was like, wow, out of all the defenders that Georgia put out on the field last year, that's the number one. I mean, I saw it as a sign of respect. So it was immediately like, all right, Jaguars, you have my attention. Plus, they got rid of Urban Meyer. The reasons why I should like the Jags are stacking up.
Yeah.
And their performance is just backing that up. And so they're a team that I've never had any, you know, sway positively or negatively about the team. So I can just enjoy them blindly. And they're a team that, you know, is putting out an enjoyable product. You know, their style of play and the way that they've gone about this season has made it interesting. And that's all I want. If I don't have a rooting interest, just be interesting. And like the Broncos and Niners, that was not interesting.
No. Not at all.
So the Jaguars will get the benefit of the doubt from me for now. And I have plenty of reasons to not like the Eagles, mainly because they're in Philadelphia.
Peterson has reasons not to like the Eagles too.
Yeah, fair.
Exactly. Jalen Hurts is their quarterback. I got plenty of reasons not to like him, Devonta Smith. But they also have Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis. So I'm a little torn. I won't be ever rooting for the Eagles. I just want their best players to be their best when they're on the field. I just want a good game. That's it. If I get a good game,
hope everyone has fun.
Exactly. But I think the Eagles are going to win. So I would pick the Eagles, but I really like what the Jaguars are doing.
Peterson, he worked obviously that wonderful game with Foles in the Super Bowl against the Pats, but then he had Wentz 50% of the time at his time with his tenure with the Eagles, and we know that Foles isn't what we saw in that Super Bowl. So had Peterson actually had Wentz more than like half of the games that he coached in Philadelphia, like I think we'd see a different record out of Peterson. I think he still got fired at like 8-8 too, so it wasn't like
and
they
Trevor
completely
Lawrence.
tanked there.
Trevor Lawrence is better than either of those quarterbacks. And lastly, he did grow up like 30 minutes from my house. He played high school football right down the road. So I've been seeing him coming up through high school. And the fact that Georgia wasn't going after him broke my heart. It was like, what the hell are y'all doing? Jake Fromm's our boy. Anyway, so Trevor Lawrence has a little bit of that home connection for me as well. Jalen Hurts has only broken my heart. So I'll still pick the Eagles, but I like the Jags. I'm picking the Jags straight up on this one just because I think the team is top to bottom. I think it's a very strong team. The offensive line has played good. It's even got some depth. They got Walker Little as a swing tackle who I think could start on many teams this year. And the talent on that defense is just coming together. Travon Walker was getting rave reviews for dropping back in coverage. He's already proven to be a pretty effective pass rusher. Josh Allen on the other side looks great. The secondary, and it's also a very, very healthy team. So I think the offense is clicking on all directions. They got plenty of weapons to get the ball out to. And I think there is a bit of, it's kind of the opposite of last week's game where I think the Eagles had some scores to settle with Carson Wentz. I think the revenge factor, not that I want to dismiss the Gardner Minshew revenge aspect to this game. But I'm going all in with the Jaguars right now.
Nice.
Sweet. All right.
What about the Falcons and Browns? Are there any big big takeaways from that game?
I think if anyone's going to have a takeaway, it's you.
Yeah. Well, They fucked up and beat the Seahawks last week. I was rooting for an Ofer, and they won't do it. They'll probably win this week, to be honest with you, because you got Clowney out and shit. What's the other defensive end's name? It's not
Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's out, isn't he?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
flipped his Porsche a handful of times, but they're
saw
saying he
that,
should
yeah.
be good. I got questioned on what was really going on there. They said the roads were wet. If you see the body cam footage, it's a pretty sunny day. I don't know if the female that was in the car with him has been identified, but I think he was shifting gears, if you know what I mean, and probably double pumped the clutch.
She was on
not-
loan from the quarterback, I think.
It's not quite Bobby Petrino, Arkansas, and his secretary.
All I'm saying
Motorcycle
is,
accident.
his mind might be elsewhere, and you can blame it on the accident. But I think he might have gotten exposed a little bit. And I think that Mariota's played well enough to keep the starting position and keep the ball moving. I think I heard a stat that he's the least sacked quarterback in the NFL right now, or like the least hit, something like that, which surprises the hell out of me. Cordero Patterson is ageless. I don't know how he's able to do what he's doing. Kyle Pitts finally showed that, hey, we can game plan around Pitts. Drake London, even though I questioned that pick when he was the first wide receiver off the board in the draft, I was like, what are we doing? He's proven me to be more stupid than even I would expect. And our defense isn't bad as far as our secondary, and they're bad enough to make it an interesting game, but the Falcons are playing at home. They're riding high from a win out west. The Browns have questions. They still don't have good quarterback play. Their defense now has questions on the front line. I'm going to pick the Falcons, and I don't want them to win, but I think they will.
The Cordero Patterson thing is so strange to me. When he was with the Pats, like you could tell the dude couldn't catch, but he in space, like the guy is great. Like had he been playing right, he's still officially a receiver on the Falcons roster, right? Or have they finally listed him as a running back?
He's a running back now. They've
Yeah.
taken away the receiver moniker and have given that to Kyle Pitts, even though they keep putting a TE. I don't know what that is, but he's not that.
And
Did that
even though
happen
instead
by
of his age-
accident, or did they like force Cordero into that position last year, or did they see something? It's just
We didn't have running backs. I think we had like Ito Smith and Todd Gurley
Mike
retired,
Davis.
and it was like Mike Davis, and it was just like, what the hell do we do? We don't have a running back, in the building. And Cordero was like, I've seen it done. I'm old as shit. I've seen this. I've seen guys run the ball thousands of times. Let me try it. And
he's old.
I think
but
out of
he's got
desperation.
young legs.
Yeah. Some of the plays that came out of the Seahawks game where he was jumping over people. I mean, 140 yards for him, even if it's two, long kick returns, it's still like, how is this old guy still doing this? The Falcons are weird. They're not the team I grew up with. I know that much. But I think they'll win against the Browns this week.
So I'm just interested to see. I'm taking the under in the Steelers Jets game, just because I feel like there's nothing worse
saw
that can
that game,
happen.
I was like, I don't have anything to say.
The fantasy prospects for all Jets receivers took a hit with Flacco going to the bench.
Is Wilson playing
Zach
this week?
Wilson. Zach Wilson's supposed to be making his return. So sell all your Jets receiver stock right now.
Yeah, I didn't
Adios,
have
Garrett
much,
Wilson.
but
Yeah.
There's also Bears Giants.
Defense. That's a defensive game.
Yeah.
I mean, Justin Fields will probably be the top performing player out of both teams. Or maybe Saquon. Shit, I forgot he's doing well again.
Yeah, it looks like Saquon again.
Either way, that's
First
not a
year
game I even want to watch.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Yeah, that's gonna be.
Khalil
Hopefully, Red
Herbert.
Zone spends a little time on that one.
This was
Yeah.
the Monday night game I had no interest in.
Oh no.
And speaking
Oh,
of
well.
Cowboys, Redskins.
Yeah. I got Reds. I'm picking Redskins for the heck of it. But who knows? It's going to be low scoring, I suspect. But the NFC least area. Yeah. I don't know.
It's got to be the Eagles to come out of that division
Yeah.
champs, right?
Right.
So it's almost like when it's Cowboys, Giants, don't care. You know, when it's Redskins, Cowboys, it's like, well, the Cowboys have a legit defense. Their offensive weapons can't seem to line up any certain, like Pollard will have a good week, then he'll disappear another week. Noah Brown will show out of nowhere, and then he'll just be like, sorry, don't know what my hands are meant for. I don't know. It's just, this is my biggest problem with the NFL is the inconsistency. Even though the talent level is supposed to be superior and these are the best football players ever, to see guys like CD Lamb running wide open and free, have a ball hit him in his hands and drop it.
Yeah.
That's,
and then
I don't know.
Smiling afterwards. I thought that was interesting.
And then Kellen Moore being like, it's okay, dude. Hey, man.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. It's difficult for me to really care about, like, there's a lot of middling teams where I put the Cowboys in that. Even with Dak, I just don't take them that seriously. Not with the way that the Eagles are playing. And Carson Wentz has to have a bounce back game. I mean, the guy was playing out of his mind the first 2 weeks. It was like top 3 quarterback play. And then the Eagles made him disappear. And I think he probably shows back up.
Yeah.
Speaking of top 3 quarterback play, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that's why I think it's a sneaky, high scoring game because I mean the Redskins defense is absolutely atrocious. I mean, one of the worst out there, and I could see Wentz overperforming after last week.
Yeah. Well, bottom 3 quarterback play. Baker Mayfield did get a win last week. Panthers Cardinals could be interesting just for entertainment value. Baker versus Kyler Murray.
Again, you got to take into account hurricane because it's in Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
And by Sunday,
start,
Charlotte, and that's later in the day, you know, it could get real messy. And Kyler over Baker. I mean, you got to, even though it's on the road and the Cardinals have less confidence in, or I have less confidence in who's going to take the field and be a top performer from the receiver position in Arizona than I do in Tampa Bay. You know, I guess Dortch, you know, but I don't think the passing game is going to be the biggest way of scoring points. So I think it's going to come down to, much like the Bills Ravens, the quarterback running the ball is probably going to come far more into play. And I just like Kyler more than Baker in that aspect.
You know, Baker Mayfield, I think, is on set to be. I just you can get 6-1 odds on Baker Mayfield, first quarterback to lose their starting job, other than Trubisky. And I'm maxing out the full $50 you can put on that one. So I think as soon as Sam Darnold is healthy, and it's remarkable that this is even up there, just considering the way Sam Darnold has played.
No.
I mean, he's someone who. I mean, he eliminates number 1 wide receivers better than better than Revis ever did. I mean, this is why OBJ, left Cleveland, right? I mean, DJ Moore is completely AWOL.
Yeah, I have him on a team, and he's on my bench.
He's awful, and that's assuming that he can get the ball past the offensive line in the first place. Since I think he's the most balls batted down of any quarterback in the league right now. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible, just how bad he is playing. I don't think McAdoo's is. I don't think it's a scheme fault at this point. I think it's really just Baker Mayfield is even worse than he looked in Cleveland, and 6-1 odds.
I got to give Baker credit though, because most quarterbacks go to Cleveland to die. Baker is showing that there is a two-way street in Cleveland. It's always been a one-way street involving Cleveland, but he's proving they've paved a lane outside of Cleveland, and he can also leave Cleveland and prove that he can also die. I don't think that he was ever going to be much in the NFL. I thought that was proven in the Rose Bowl in 2017, but the Browns just he has outlived his Heisman hype longer than any other quarterback I've ever seen in my life. I don't know how he's still employed in the NFL as a starter.
Well, it's like he's
pissed off somewhere right now.
Yeah, well, and he's a player that he doesn't play in the scheme very well, and so he plays out of scheme, and he thinks he's Josh Allen, but he's a walk-on athlete, And like I'm stealing this a bit from Josh Norris, but like it's absolutely true. Like he's someone who breaks down and starts to scramble and tries to make things happen. He's just not athletically talented enough to regularly beat NFL defenses like this. I mean, even the game last week, Laviska Shenault was the number one receiver. I think his catches came from like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Like it is absolutely atrocious offensive football. And it's bad all around. It's whoever starts back up there next year when they completely clean house. They're gonna have a lot of work to do.
I'll put it this way: if Matt Corral never tore every ligament in his knee in the Sugar Bowl, he would be the starting quarterback right now.
One good thing to see with the Panthers is we're entering week 4 and Christian McCaffrey is still playing. So there's that.
Well, you can't get hurt if they're not using you.
This is true. Was it you, Tho? You were saying that he went to the TB12 method, right?
Yeah. He's getting very loose rather than bulk.
It's all about that flexibility.
Yeah.
I think the only other game we haven't mentioned is Chargers-Texans. I'm starting to know more players on the Texans team, so there is that.
I still watch all of their games because one of my close friends loves them. And having seen all of them and all of the Chargers also, I think the Chargers got this one.
Yeah, I think they're going to bounce back too.
Keenan Allen looks like he could be a go this weekend. I don't know if Herbert is going to be fully back up to speed. I think that's an injury that lingers.
Yeah.
I think that from a talent aspect, much like every team the Texans have played, the opposition to the Texans should win easily. But the Texans have proven to be a much tougher team than anybody thought they would be. Even with Davis Mills, like who the hell would have ever thought that he can, he's slated to lose every game. But I don't think that there's something about the Texans. Maybe it's just always playing as underdog and they got nothing to lose that puts them in the forever dangerous category. I don't. Let me go back to my standard. Where's the game being played?
Houston.
I'm going to take the Texans on this one.
Oh,
because again, they can't lose every game they play. They're not the Detroit Lions from a few years ago.
It's Lovie Smith.
Lovey's been around this, thing
He's
before.
Been around for a while, yeah.
And the Texans have done nothing but surprise me in how well they've stayed in games. Eventually, that has to break their way. And I think that you have a vulnerable Chargers team. I don't think that, they know what they're doing yet. I don't think that they've had all the pieces in place for a full game to know really how their game plan would work. And I don't have trust in their coach to figure it out on the fly. So I think it's a perfect setup game for the Texans to actually do something this week.
I'm liking these picks. A lot of you guys are saying Raiders win, which means the Broncos lose. You're picking the Bucks over the Chiefs, and now the Texans over the Chargers. This is going to be a very good weekend for me if all goes your way.
It's a total 3-game swap from last weekend.
What we need.
Three teams lose last weekend. 3 teams will lose this weekend, but there has to be a winner in there somewhere, and that'll be the Raiders.
I do believe Justin titled the show "Locks of the Week Guaranteed to Be Wrong" or something like that.
Well, what the fuck does that guy know? He's not even here.
Hey, he's not even here.
He is in the comments section.
He is there.
So who do you got, Texans or Chargers?
I'm going with the Texans as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I think Mills is improving. I think there's enough there on defense, and let's roll with Lovey.
Davis Mills, is that his name?
Yep.
I always want to call him Davis Webb. Why do I want to call him Davis Webb?
Mark,
I think
that's not really a basketball name.
Davis Webb. He was the Stanford quarterback a while back that went to the Giants.
That's probably
there is a Davis Webb that.
I thought there was a quarterback by that name.
Davis Webb sounds like a power forward from 1988 in Michigan lore that I've never heard of. He just
maybe.
I'm sure.
I got the Chargers too, Buck. So
all right. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're wrong. I want the Texans to win this one, but boy, if they do and the Chargers lose this, it's gonna be nice. Gonna be nice. All right, fellas.
We tell the people where you can find you. I know it's all mostly non-sports stuff, but
we talk
it off.
Yeah, anybody. Buck, give your plugs.
Counterflowpodcast.com. any podcatcher has the show Counterflow with Buck Johnson on it. Go to the YouTube page, hit subscribe. We just dropped an episode this evening with Rachel Wilson of Tucker Carlson fame. She's a famous homeschooling mom, and she wrote this here book. I know this isn't very sports-like, but the occult feminism: the secret history of women's liberation. We're swimming in it. You don't even recognize it. We're swimming in it so deeply, and so we dive into all of that kind of thing.
This is your second like Tucker Carlson crossover guest in like as many weeks, it seems.
Yeah, and one of his producers followed me on Twitter. So
there you go.
The lanes are merging.
I'm waiting for this Fox Nation Tucker Buck Johnson interview.
Right. Yeah. Charles Haywood on after he was on my show recently, and we share guests. Pedro Gonzalez. It's just him and I are just kind of simpatico like that. Bucker called.
Yeah. Dude, that's new Twitter alt just arrived.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I guess I'll go. I'll be the gooey center of the brain sandwich that I'm in the middle of. Believe it or not, after tonight and last week, there is a podcast out there with 86 episodes averaging 2 hours apiece of this dumb voice saying much dumber things than I've said tonight. And just to prove the rule that there are too many podcasts out there, I also have one. It's called Ignore the Rant. We will not make you smarter. I do it with two buddies of mine that don't even know I'm doing this because that's how we roll. And so if you want to get dumb, come get dumb with us. Check out Ignore the Rant on all your podcast catchers.
You really know how to sell that sucker. I gotta hand it to you.
Did Tom Woods teach you that sales pitch?
No, I just did it on the fly right now.
There you go. And I'm at the Mises Institute and the Radio Rothbard podcast. We had a great interview earlier today about the Nord Stream pipeline and some of the history there. So I think that episode will be going up tomorrow. So Radio Rothbard.
And I've got a Substack at markmetz.substack.com where I write about political things and also write fiction stories and stuff. So it's all over the place.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
This was fun.
Yeah.